So how do you kind of reconcile that and practice faith and also be so passionate about some of the things you believe so strongly in that maybe some people in a particular religion don't?
Yeah. I love your word incongruent because we know certain things.
Yes.
There's an inner knowing about things. And for me, I'll say, as I was traveling the world more and more, I was so lucky on behalf of the foundation, I got to travel. But, I was out in low income countries 3, sometimes 4 times a year, all over the world. And I was learning from these men and women in villages about their lives, and they would talk about children. And both the men and the women knew that when they could space the births of those children, they were better off. Or if they could limit, let's say they could limit and decide they were only going to have 3 or 4 instead of 6 or 7, they knew they could then feed their kids could go to school, they had a chance, those kids, of maybe growing up and living their dreams. And so, but I would go in these villages and I would ask people. I literally was in a village, I remember one time, and we all gathered under a tree. There were about 150 people. And I said, how many of you know a woman that has died in childbirth? And the number of hands that went up was astounding. And then I said, how many of you know of a baby that's been lost in childbirth? And like even more hands went up. And this was a group where they knew about contraceptives but didn't have access. The world had backed away after the 1970s. We used to make sure that people had access to contraceptives, not for all the right reasons. But the world had backed away. And as I learned the difference, that child was lost because the mom had them too close together. She didn't mean to, but all of a sudden the next one came and boom, she lost that baby prematurely because the birth was too quick and her body wasn't ready. I started to realize I believe in life. I believe in these children's lives, the worthiness of them, the inherent beauty on the day they're born. But because of a man-made rule in the church that I'm in, the Catholic Church, we're not allowing women to have access to contraceptives. And so talk about an incongruency, right? And I had to really then reckon with my faith. I brought in some Notre Dame scholars to teach me. I learned the history, how the Catholic Church had gotten there, why they'd gotten there. I started to learn from a very liberal Jesuit priest, listening to his lectures and his teachings and his books, Richard Rohr. And I just realized, wow, I need to actually unlearn some of these things because I can't square the circle. I believe in the dignity of life, and yet we're losing more children because of this. We won't allow this tool to be given to women. And it really was almost a crisis of faith, but I was able to eventually reconcile them and say, no, this is what I believe and I know to be true, and I am going to speak the truth in the world. And that took, again, a lot of courage and a lot of leaning forward. But boy, did it feel right to give voice to what these families and these women were telling me. Like if I had the privilege of being there and them sharing their lives with me, I felt, given my position at the foundation, I had a responsibility to go voice that and do something about it on the world stage. And it animated my life.
I love something you just said, that we all have a knowing, like we all have a knowing and know the truth. And I believe in God. I pray almost every day, all the things. And in my knowing, Melinda, how I feel like how I live my life. And I want to share this because I think something you shared is so powerful. And just for anybody listening or watching us right now who is maybe in that incongruent place, they're like, well, I kind of feel like to explore faith in my life, but I just can't get over that rule or that judgment or whatever. It's that knowing. It's asking yourself what feels true, like what feels true to me. And everyone can do that. It's free once we get good at it, right? And I remember, I've gotten pushback on my show for having people that that maybe love differently or vote differently or identify differently. And every time how I feel is when I ask my knowing, my soul, I feel like if Jesus were here right now, he would love you no matter what, no matter how you identify or how you vote or and that's what I believe, that's what I feel is true. So that's how I try to then live my life. And it's just, I want to share that because when you shared that so beautifully, I think for me, I think that's the powerful thing for people to do. And a lot of people actually haven't considered that. Well, maybe I can approach faith in a way that I take the parts that feel true and feel right and feel like they're true for me, and every person can do that.